Hey, Sandra Gerard from SandraTWP.com here to talk to you about this book, Germany at Odds. It's written by Eldad Beck, who is an Israeli journalist who has lived abroad for many years. Over the past more than 10 years, he's been living in Germany, and he's sharing here his perspective on events and incidents, from individual incidents with individual people, to demonstrations on what he has seen in Germany over the past decade. He gives you the background that I very much appreciated, not only his background as a journalist, but also just how he grew up, the culture he grew up in. Even though he grew up in Israel, where the persecution of the Jews in the Holocaust is part of their education. It's very integrated into their learning system. He really felt a disconnect from that. He kind of hated it. He didn't see what that had anything to do with him personally until he was an adult. And in addition, he grew up in a family that had really close ties to Germany. They had business ties, they had cultural ties. There was a lot of admiration and a lot of appreciation for German culture there. So he did not grow up with this sense of Germany being a wicked place or an evil place. So you get that perspective, and then his adjustment as he sees events unfolding in Germany, events that give him moments of concern, and nobody else seems to think it's a big deal, or as he starts to discover that an event that is described one way by the people who are actually present, whether that are individuals who came to him or that is himself, don't match up with what ends up coming out in the press or the information that is sent out. Now, here's the thing. It's really easy with books like this to be very dismissive and say, well, it's propaganda, or it's just one man's perspective. And that's really true. And I have to be honest with you, I really had a hard time reading this book when it first came out, because, or I shouldn't say when it first came out, when I first received a copy, because I received it right after the Paris attacks. And it was really too much violence, violent thought, not just violent actions, violent attitudes. And I had to take a step back. But when I came back to read it, I found that the things that I had previously been maybe a little skeptical about, or that I thought, well, maybe he's being sensitive, maybe this is just his perspective as a Jew, or maybe this is his perspective as an Israeli citizen, or maybe this is just he's feeling sensitive because this isn't his country. I took a look at that in perspective of a lot of the rhetoric that was coming out here in the U.S. following those Paris attacks. And suddenly what Beck is saying doesn't really seem so radical. There was so much rhetoric that I heard and that I read on social media, coming from the mouths of politicians, coming from individuals, coming from news sources, that just recently that would have been considered outrageous and unacceptable speech. And here, not only were people saying it publicly and very openly, but they were having a really responsive number of people who were hearing them and willing to hear more. And that's really concerning. I'm not saying that we don't need to be aware of the dangers not only in attitudes but in actions of others, but we also need to be aware of them in ourselves. This book, I can't tell you that you're going to read this book and agree with everything that the author says, but this book will have you pause and think back about your own attitudes and your own perceptions. And are you being reactionary, or are you being responsive? Are you looking at what's going and saying, what's really the best thing to do here, or are you just taking a knee-jerk emotional reaction of whatever we need to do to be safe? Because the truth is that sometimes I hear people say, well, we have to do something. And while that's true, what we have to do doesn't mean we have to do anything, because not doing just anything is a good idea. This is a book that will get you to think. And if you are prepared to take a look at some new ideas and really think those through, then this would be a great book for you. There'll be information in the notes below, along with the link where you can get a copy. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.